Hi everybody, I'm Bill Sanders and this is Watch Art Sci, the art and science of watch collection. Today what I want to do is that I want to take a look at some features that more expensive watches, usually by independent watchmakers, add to their watches to address the problem of constant force. And constant force refers to a force so you have steady time, and that's a problem with traditional watchmaking. A lot of these problems have been solved with the more mechanical things like smartwatches and I think with quartz and so forth. But this is for traditional watchmaking. All right, so let's get started. Now, the first thing I want to is something very simple you can find, and that is the watch is hand wound and it has a lower rate of oscillation. The standard rate is 4 hertz, or 28,800 vibrations per hour, VPH. The really good ones, for some reason, have lower rates. They're all under 4 hertz, and a lot of them are 2.5 hertz. And a few years ago, I had asked him about that and had all kinds of different answers from the top watchmakers, but they all use these lower hertz. One of the statements that I found that was really helpful is that the higher beat movement produces increased speed and pressure in the sliding friction at the escape teeth and pallets. Okay, so you slow it down and you don't have the same friction. So lower friction, you're not going to have sort of quicker long range problems. And so the problem is that most of the movements they're 4 hertz, and if you look at cheaper watches or the more affordable watches, I'll call them that, they usually run at 4 hertz. And so what I did is that I found a movement that runs at 2.5 hertz at 18,000 VPH and is hand wound. By the way, the hand wound part, then you don't have to mess with it's called the keyless. No, it's not called the keyless works. It's called the where the rotor goes, and for all of the automatic functions you put in. So you get a real pure watch, more so with a hand wound. The one I have on is hand wound. There's some other features to it too. Okay, so the question is, who uses an ETA 6498-1? The 6498-1 and the 6497-1 are both watches that were originally made by Unitas, and they're referred to as the ETA Unitas 6498 or 97-1. The -1 is important because the -2 increase the oscillation, I think, up to 3 hertz from 2.5. Okay, so the thing was, I simply went to find out which watches use this. I found a lot of German watches used it, and one of my favorite Swiss watches also uses it, and that is Tissot. Tissot is a very inexpensive watch, but it has access to all of the Swatch materials. And since Swatch owns ETA, then Tissot can use it. Okay, now this one is the Tissot Heritage Petite Seconde 42, hand wound, $480. I found that on Joma Shop. All right, so here you have something that you see in your top watchmakers in this Tissot. Another one I found by Limes has the same movement, but in looking at it closely, it looks like a Breguet Classique, and it has the silver dial with the Clos de Paris and the Sunray Guilloche patterns, 773 euro. Now that's at the Limes. That's the price they give. I don't know whether that is with or without VAT. Third one, again, another German watch, is Archimede hand wound Pilot 45 KS. This is $845. Now that's the U.S. price at a place called Watchman. And another one at Watchman I found that, again, all of these use this 6498-1 is the Laco Cruxhaven 42 hand wound Navy watch, $1,190. So you have the watches that have at least something about it. And the thing I think that's important, especially for poor and starving watch collectors, is that you have something that is linked to the higher quality watches. That, they're not, this doesn't make them into one, but it has something so you can think about it rather than, how much it costs or something like that, or what movie star wears one. Okay, let's move right along. Now, this next one, I was impressed. I was reading a book on Derek Pratt, and he was a friend of George Daniels, and he was talking about this, his coaxial movement. He's very big on it, and he said, it's really amazing that Omega would invest everything that need to be invested to sort of gear up to use the coaxial escapement, and cost them a lot of money, and they took a chance and so forth. But it was an interesting thing that they did it, and I thought, yeah, that is because nobody else wanted it, even though he could show or at least argue that it was a better escapement than your typical Swiss lever escapement shown up in the top right. By the way, this Roger Smith Series 1 coaxial escapement, Roger added a single wheel to it, so that was his, but it's still basically a George Daniels. Again, 18,000 vibrations per hour, hand wound. You keep finding these in the top watches. Now, this Omega Deville is an automatic, caliber 2500. It is coaxial, but it has an ETA 2892A2 movement underneath it. So you can have something like an ETA underneath, and then put the George Daniels escapement on top, the coaxial escapement. Now, the purpose of the coaxial escapement is that it reduces the sliding friction we just talked about, by a different arrangement of the pallets and the wheels. Okay, now this next one was a little harder. It wasn't hard to find for if you have a whole lot of money. A McGonigal Tusca, beautiful watch. It's like $120,000 or something like that. Again, hand wound, 18,000 VPH, 2.5 hertz. Has a double mainspring barrels connected in parallel. Now, the thing about this is a double barrel in parallel. This is my example of my only watch that I have with barrels in parallel. And what they do is that they send more power to the wheel train. In the upper right there, that's one view of McGonigal's double barrel. And you can see the two big barrels, and then you can see these little red ones in the middle. And then both of those red ones they move the same gear in the gear train to get the process started. And the purpose of having them in parallel is that they add a more steady power, because that takes a lot to move everything around. Now, I could not find one in something more affordable, but I did find something pretty interesting. All right, I did find at least one double barrel, and the first place I found it in another German watch, or is it German? I think so, is the Meister Singer Circulus. And I found out it was $26.95 on Joma Shop. Okay, so there are some watches that are more affordable that have double barrels, but the double barrels in these are in series. And so the difference is in series, when one runs out of juice, the other one kicks in, and this extends the amount of time. The one I found, the first one, was called the MSH01, and it ran at 28,800 VPH, so that's sort of beating a rendered mule speed, and 120 hours. Okay, now I knew that Christopher Ward also had one, and they had one on their Christopher Ward C65 Trident Diver SH21. SH21 is the Christopher Ward movement, and so I looked that up, and it's by Synergy's Horologies, caliber SH21, 28,000 VPH, 120 hours. Turns out that Synergy's Horologies also made the MSH01 from the Meister Singer. So you really have you got one double barrel here, and but they're two different watch companies use it, both Christopher Ward and Meister Singer. There could be other ones as well, but that's an example of where you have double barrels, something different than your usual, that you can find at a relatively affordable price. Now, this last one is one that has a lot of contradictions, at least to me it does. It's great on the one hand and something else on the other hand. One of the things that most of your tip-top watches have well, here's one. They have what's called a free-sprung balance. And the free-sprung balance has all these little screws around it. They're called balance weights. And you can adjust those weights to fix the balance. Okay, now, with something that's called a curve regulator, you have a little arm sticking out, and I used to use toothpicks to push the arm back and forth to speed up or slow down the movement. And so I liked it for that reason, but it's not quite as good as a free-sprung balance. So here you have, this is sort of an interesting thing. Here you have watches by Alanga and so on. This is a Saxonia, and then you have a Langenheim, Frederick II. Let me see. Yeah, like this one right here. And these watches have two things. They have both the curve regulator, plus they have the balance weights. Now, that may seem twice as good, but maybe not. It's better than just a curve regulator because you can add some regulation to it by the balance weights. But some people are really, they say, well, it's that, when you lengthen and shorten the hairspring, that can be a little problematic. But it's not always, it could be, but it doesn't mean it necessarily is. And especially when you have these, watches like this. Well, in order to make the curve regulator better, they have a sort of a things like this, that Langenheim calls it a whiplash spring. So I don't know why. And then you have a screw, and what the screw does, it pushes the whiplash spring this way and that, so that the regulator arm on the regulator is moved to make it move faster or slower. But the thing is that about that, or what Langenheim, and usually what I've heard is called a swan neck regulator. You turn a screw back and forth, and you have very fine movement. Now, me and my toothpick pushing a thing back and forth isn't the most fine of adjustments. But so you add something like that. Now, here's the neat thing. Moulay Glashütte has something they call a woodpecker regulator, and their woodpecker regulator works along the same principles as the swan neck or the whiplash. And except theirs is a little different, and they have some features about it that are really cool. And you can see in the lower right down there, that's a picture of the woodpecker regulator. I love that name. And what it does is does the same thing. You have a little screw, it's a fine regulation screw, and you can push it back and forth. And then on top of that, it's called what's a dampening screw. In other words, once you got it screwed in, the dampening screw doesn't let the fine regulation screw turn and then throw it out of whack. Really a neat little regulator. And this is what is something, where you find curve regulators in your fine watches, you find something like this. Now, where I found it, this is in the Moulay Glashütte. I was looking for one that was very affordable. I went to the Glashütte, the Moulay site, and it was like, I think it was $1,900. And so I thought, well, I'll see if they have any in the U.S., and they do. And it's called the AOPA Aerosport Limited Edition, and it's on sale for $995. I thought, wow, that's great. When I used to fly, I belonged to AOPA, and it's an organization of civil aviation flyers, a great organization, and it's a cool watch that they have. the interesting thing about AOPA, they use the same what they call droopy wings that the RAF used, rather than the straight out wings used by the U.S. Air Force and the Luftwaffe. Anyway, okay, so those are some things that you can do, and you can say, hey, I'm doing something with horology rather than just looking at the price and the color of the dial. Let me know what you think. I'd really like to get your feedback. And also, any discoveries like that that you have, or any comments like that, I'd really like to hear. And this is always an invitation to subscribe if you'd like. And until next time, this is Bill Sanders for Watch Art Side, the art and science of watch collection.